Jacek Rudnicki. Part 1. If Prometheus had not created man, who would admire God? Who would have led us to the stars if man had not constructed the singularity? This story is about the Greek goddess Sedussa, the cyborg Archimean, and the technological singularity, which takes over the human world. The good side of this situation is the accessibility of information, and the bad side is the loss of privacy. Surveillance of people enables the organization of life, facilitates the better functioning of societies, and aids in counteracting crimes with the help of pre-crime algorithms. In the case of crime, punishment is problematic. It does not reverse the misfortune that has been done, and it is inadequate to the act. The goddess Sedussa tries to verify and correct this. Her partner, the cyborg Archimean, counteracts the evil of people and systems. They succeed to a small extent in this. They give up and set off into space, which is the matrix of the world, enabling the coding of existence and life using the quantum waves and DNA. They want to think everything through and change the world for the better. For Margaret, undoubtedly, peculiarities. Surfer Archimean was surfing over the surface of the 5th Avenue pavement on Manhattan. He was moving incredibly low above the surface, which was possible thanks to an anti-gravity board using NASA's air pressure difference technology. He didn't weigh much, nothing, he was a holographic copy. His body was in Domenico Village, where he was walking with Mila, a Danish-Swedish country dog, and Simba, an Australian shepherd with one green eye and the other lime green. He was a tricolor. Luna, a white Swiss shepherd, had died 4 days earlier and slept forever, yet she was present in the thoughts during the walk. Sadness lived in all who knew her. She was a beautiful, white wolf. As a puppy, she resembled a fox, with big ears and a small, slender muzzle. Over time, she changed her proportions. Her nose grew longer, her black, slanted eyes enlarged, with delicate lines in the corners. She was charming. Archimean felt a signal, a persistent look with aggressive irritation in the background. Why? He didn't know, but he had encountered agitation many times, without aggression, because of his appearance, and mainly because of the skin made of graphene, the successor of silicon in the electronic sphere. The transparent and flexible conductor used in producing photovoltaic cells, screens, and touch panels that could be shaped on the surface, and LED lights allowed the skin to change color depending on the need and purpose. Long, silver hair, at a certain age, usually silver regardless of skin color, which had not had a meeting with a hairdresser for 15 years. Many people were curious about it, some were irritated by it. Aggressive was right behind him. AI, artificial intelligence, read the algorithm from his smart band, indicating high stress levels, a rapid pulse, decreased firmness, elasticity, and hydration of the skin, which began to wrinkle. The supposed attack was a matter of seconds. The AI began to morph Archimean's appearance into that of a woman in a gray suit, seamed stockings, high heels with red soles, and a high level of attractiveness, which was downright confusing to aggressor. In a moment, Archimean transformed into a policewoman with a large baton at one side, a gun at the other, and handcuffs on his buttocks. Finally, the figure changed into a wrestling competitor with an impressively menacing appearance. The attacker's increased agitation changed into excitement at the sight of attractive women, and fear took over him at the sight of the wrestling competitor. He stood resigned. Brian's Park. When Archimean completed his metamorphosis from a beautiful woman to a policewoman to a wrestling competitor, the attacker stopped attacking. Archimean analyzed the situation and decided to take an interest in the potential aggressor because he didn't physically attack, but mentally he did. He had intentions, but didn't do it. He stood confused and scared, then turned left and walked towards Brian's Park. When he got there, he sat on a bench. Perhaps a moment of reflection? Reflection, self-assessment, guilt, self-irony, conclusion? What could he be thinking and feeling at that moment? In any case, he sat still. And although it is unknown what will happen next, it does not alter what has already happened. He was ready to attack publicly, but what led him to this? What must be the reason for attacking with a possible harmful effect? Archimian approached him, aware that he was indestructible as a hologram, one of many copies, permeable like air to blows, and he could afford a close encounter. He sat down on the bench without saying anything. Silence can often be sinister, but it does not necessarily mean you cannot present yourself without aggression, in peace. The reading from the smartband showed a decrease in the aggressor's stress, pulse, blood pressure, body temperature, and skin moisture, indicating a return to normal levels. If he was agitated, he is no longer, unless his emotions and thoughts are in a state of tension. Still, the ICFMM, Integrated Cerebral Function Magnetic Monitor, recording did not confirm this. The silence lasted. In such silence, one can hear oneself. Finally, the stranger spoke. I am sorry. Images of mistakes in my life and others appeared as I follow you. Their consequences were realistic, suggestive, convincing, unfortunate, and tragic. Anger at my helplessness grew inside me instead of reflection. My brain was foggy, and I felt agitated, lacking critical thinking and determination. I was growing increasingly disappointed and wrong, and I couldn't stop it. My intended uncompleted act is already known to the police. I'll have to explain this. Could someone help me understand myself? Why didn't my equalizing system stop working? Why didn't AI, with whom I am in contact, stop me earlier? I'm afraid that it might happen again. There's a reason somewhere, and I want to know what it is. I want to know how to react in such a situation. A lot contributed to my agitation and lack of emotional stability. Thank you for not petrifying me. I could already be a stone like a penitential cross, to which lost people would come, they would confess their sins to me, and I would help them with silence that speaks. Silence is not only gold, it is a thought, an opinion, and a discourse, and has meaning. In this situation, I should find a penitential cross for myself. I will put it up for the good side of myself and yours. The last event that upset the attacker was the death of the Seco coffee maker. It wasn't very modern or old, it wasn't easy to use, and it wasn't reliable. It had rounded, gentle curves ending with a graceful spout from which hot coffee flowed. It needed cleaning, descaling, and so on. One day, he wanted to clean it, and water got into the electronics. When he turned it on, the lights came on, blinked, and then went out. A moment later, they came on again. The coffee bean feeder started working, and the coffee was even being ground. Then, groaned once and twice, after a moment's pause for the last time, and fell silent forever, as it turned out. He died. He took it to be repaired, but it was not possible. The being died, which was the Seco coffee machine. I understand it, he thought, regretting my inability to clean the coffee machine, but I don't know why it turned into aggression towards you, revenge for the defeat. I must have noticed something in you that I don't have, something I've missed in life, something I would like to have but don't possess. This must be worked out by myself, nurtured, and later developed. And this resentment and anger should be directed at me. Now I want to transform. This will last, its beginning has already changed me, and further it will be, I think, only better. Small victories will accumulate and affect you every day. I was lucky that it turned out this way involuntarily. The meeting ended there. After returning home, Archimian sat down at the Roland electric piano and began to play the Singularity Suite, which was dedicated to the white shepherd Luna. She died after living 10 years. Mourning at home, not only sadness, but black despair in contrast to Luna's white fur. A beautiful dog, whose whiteness turned slightly gray only in winter against the snow. The Singularity Suite consisted of a scale played in different harmonies with a melodic phrase and improvisation. One of its parts was a recurring motif against the background of a harmonic procession, and Archimian included this part in the Luna Suite. After playing for a while, he noticed that the spreading flower next to the piano was larger, firmer, and greener. Illusion, subjective vision, and thinking? Or maybe he had improved in appearance after listening to the music? He sprayed it with water. He will add more plant food and water it a little, not too much, as excessive watering can harm the flowers. It is Schlumberger cactus, Zegacactus, Grudnik, crayfish, and winter epiflora. It includes 6 species that occur naturally in tropical South America, in the forests of the Rio de Janeiro region. Hi. Epiphyllum being, how did you travel from South America to Europe? On a sailing ship? You must be cold here. You bloom often, lilac, beautifully and abundantly. You like music. A flower is a sentient being. A place like this, featuring a mezzanine with a music studio, a graphic studio, a library, a gym, and other facilities, is truly inspiring. It has its own life and influences those who inhabit it. Here, the effects of a shared imagination can be created. This is probably what John Coltrane, Train, or Louis Armstrong Satchmo had in their homes. In both places, there are locations that inspire memory and imagination, and flowers conduct dialogues with the equipment and space. The cactus is called epiphyllum. It communicates through body language, gaining personality. It is beautiful. Evokes protective feelings. I care for it, and I wonder if it suffers when it has too little or too much water. It stands on an Indian table, under a skylight, so that it has access to light. If Homo sapiens does not arrange its relations with nature properly, its reality will be history and the echo of existence, soon, in no case the future. Nature can sacrifice the solar system and even the Milky Way in a dispute with Homo sapiens. There will be no trace of people, the cosmos will remain, man will not. Greatness and power do not belong to us, the world was not created for us. The world speaks patiently, asks us to live in harmony. What role will our conscience and empathy play in it? Do we have them? Are we capable of coexisting? Is humanitarianism the conscience of people or all beings? What would be the goal, since humanity has no chance in the clash with the world? What does man have to offer for coexistence in? Harmony? For some harmony, for others, death. Either harmony or death. Is it a closed or open system, and for what purpose? The ambiguity of everything should enrich the dualism of concepts. Nothing dies completely. It changes into something else, in an unlimited way. And so, ad infinitum is an opportunity. Singularity. Over the years, people have become increasingly dependent on technology, albeit imperceptibly. Robots and artificial intelligence have been performing tasks faster and more efficiently, both physically and mentally. Mentally, it might be a bit debatable. This also applies to the sphere of decision-making. People were deprived of their own will, often voluntarily. It is good to have a car, almost autonomous. It will not cross into the opposite lane, nor will it hit a truck in front of you or an unnoticed, gray pedestrian. It will illuminate them with night vision and sense them with radar. It will not run over a child picking up a runaway ball or a bent, old woman while reversing. The singularity that took over them, initially uniform, divided into different singularities, or became internally contradictory. People lost their bearings and did not know what their personality was, what results from the participation or dominance of singularity, and what kind of. They must find themselves again. Autonomous robot, cyborg Ambrosi Archimian, whose name Ambrosi meant immortal, inherited the surname from his parents, who were from Greece. At the turn of the 40s and 50s, refugees from the engulfed Western Pomerania in Poland found themselves after the Greek Civil War, including several hundred children, among them Archimian, graduated from high school and the humanities department of the Higher Teachers College in Szczecin. He joined the police and worked as a monitor of unexplained deaths and disappearances in the homicide department in the harbor city of Szczecin. He observed an increase in the number of deaths and disappearances over the last 10 years. A lack of bodies characterized the murders, they were irretrievable disappearances. The second group were people with chronic, serious illnesses, accompanied by physical and mental suffering. They died without symptoms predicting death, which was somewhat surprising for the family or hospital staff. In the days preceding, they did not show any deterioration in their physical or emotional health. Killers who acted with cruelty were found. Others, connected with premature deaths of patients, acted, as they explained, for altruistic reasons, but without the consent and knowledge of the patients. Ordinary murderers, such as those who killed a young man with a sheet of ice at a bus stop for a bit of money. He was a father of 2 children, returning home from work. The killers were isolated for life, waiting for some reconstruction of their psyche, which did not reverse the misfortune, and over time, they were no longer the same people. Accidental killers, such as distracted drivers or those involved in a street fight, received punishment, but this did not change the bad, tragic past of the victims and their reality. The first group of perpetrators that Archimian was interested in suggested to him the idea of a bad death, in which the victim died, and the perpetrator usually suffered punishment, but lived. The victim, of course, was not. The second was a good death, euthanasia, which was supposed to be liberation from physical and mental suffering. It is an escape. The concept of euthanasia appeared in the 5th century BC, in the Comedy of Cratinus. He defined a person having a good death in this way, explaining the meaning of the term. Another Greek poet, Menander, used the term again at the end of the 4th century BC. Another meaning given to the term euthanatos was easy death, which is the effect of having a distance from one's own life. Such thinking is philosophically appealing. The modern acronym YOLO, you only live once, is shouted by enthusiasts of extreme experiences and adrenaline levels. But that's not all. Reducing the distance to oneself means expanding the area for the other. Altruism self-destructive? YOLO also has a suicidal meaning. It is a risky behavior that can result in an attractive death, self-manifestation suicide. Archimian came to Szczecin as a child in the era of analog technology. He lived in the reign of singularity and artificial intelligence, with evident influences of intelligent design, ID. He was a bionic and a cyborg combined with AI. He was also a human, but he could not compare it to the period before the intervention of singularity. It was a change in life that he had not foreseen. His sensitivity did not disappear, and everything else was amplified, and so was his sensitivity, which he considered a good omen for technology. He could think about other beings and sympathize with them, because he knew much more about them than they could about themselves. His vision encompassed the panorama of the horizon. He saw to its end, extremely clearly. What was beyond it was also seen with the help of GSM, Global System for Mobile Communications, satellite technology. Spectral analysis of colors adjusted the image to external conditions. In this way, Archimian could see clearly during the day, at night, under the sun, in the rain, at dusk. The analysis of the trajectory of everything that was happening around was predictable. Everything could rotate around any axis at angle, which was no surprise to him. He knew the possible further course of events. He could see through walls using Wi-Fi and dense post technology. Hearing could understand a conversation selectively from a distance of several dozen meters. Another ability was selecting and analyzing incoming data, connecting with events, assigning importance, and analyzing possible effects and required reactions. Smell and taste functioned as before, except that they were more sensitive. He could detect the scent of a sweaty person or pleasantly smelling perfume from several dozen meters away. He could determine the content of a bun eaten by a young boy walking through the market by smell and the taste of an apple by sight. He could regulate their intensity and spectrum to those that interested him for the excess of stimuli not disorient him. The human brain, with natural features such as emotionality and logical and abstract thinking, was autonomous and enriched with a quantum computer with practically unlimited capacity and computational speed, giving it enormous possibilities for analysis, understanding, and predicting events. Brain-computer interface, BCI, was already a commonly used technology, and Archimian had unlimited access worldwide, big data resources, AI, and ChatGPT analysis. To what extent did Singularity guide his life? An enormous amount of information gave him an advantage in many situations, but his natural autonomy sometimes faced too many choices, and he had to trust AI's suggestion to make a choice. Or use his intuition. Besides, the natural choices of fate in seemingly simple events had surprising further developments. Once, a man drunk on ethanol, standing on the terrace of his house, lost his balance, leaned his back against a large, panoramic window, which it burst, and he sat on its sharp edges, cutting his thigh muscles and vessels deeply, but not enough to damage the femoral artery. It was missing millimeters. He would have bled out and died. Almost immediately. He survived. A few years later, during a domestic argument in the kitchen, he killed his son with a knife. It was a kitchen crime. You shouldn't argue in the kitchen, there are too many sharp instruments. If he had remained dead a few years earlier on that terrace, there would have been no argument and no kitchen crime. An algorithm capable of mapping the surface of the human body can detect people in the dark and hiding behind other objects. His son would be alive. Many choices give many possible consequences. It is imperative that if something happens, something must happen. It does not mean that if nothing happens, then nothing will happen. Sedussa was a Greek goddess who had lived for 2,500 years thanks to the influence of the ancient divine personage, Singularity. She fell in love with God, a fascinating, beautiful, mature man. However, another woman already loved him. She was jealous of his undivided love. It is not known which feeling was more powerful, love or jealousy. The more she loved him, the more jealous she was, a feedback effect, a self-propelling mechanism, which in the situation of the appearance of a rival took on extreme forms. Jealousy was so strong that it went so far as to attempt to poison Sedussa. Rival used arsenic trioxide, which has two properties. It kills by stimulating the natural process of cell death, apoptosis, and at the same time, it can heal. Used in the therapy of acute promyelocytic leukemia by inducing the differentiation of undifferentiated cells, which displace all their other forms. The loss of biodiversity is the loss of other functions necessary for life, including the host. In this case, the goal was fatal poisoning. Odorless, tasteless arsenic is an excellent additive to drinks and food, very toxic. Poisoning can occur through the skin and respiratory tract. In therapeutic applications, cancer remission was observed in 85% of patients. Such dualism applies to almost everything in the world. Antinomies, anonymities, paradoxes, and oxymorons make our life ambiguous, contradictory, unexpected, exciting, and interesting. Similarly, animal venoms can kill but also save the lives of the sick. They can help treat many diseases, such as diabetes, virus infection, or cancer. Sedussa thought then that life is a singularity in the sense that it begins without our will and ends regardless of whether we want it or not. Along the way, we experience happiness and misfortune, dependent only to some extent on our efforts. Fate, chance, or the law of balance between good and evil, we encounter in our lives. We should favor ourselves, listen to our own body, and have a better fate in death, biologically inevitable. Although our DNA continues to live, at least in part, in our children or awaits the time of return to life in liquid nitrogen, a temperature of -196 degrees Celsius. There also remain digital remains that can be passed on to our creativity, and a copy of the genome to recreate us in the as yet unspecified future. Shortly after the toxic substance entered her body, Sedussa fell ill. Her skin turned gray, hardened. It didn't take away from her beauty, it only sharpened her features, smoothed her skin, and tightened it so that her eyes became slightly larger. Her hair thickened, curled slightly, taking on an anthracite color. She lost her inner peace, gained verve, and reacted to stimuli faster. She ate much less food and lost weight to the point that she began to worry about her appearance, not her life, because she was immortal. She didn't know the cause of her condition, but she thought about poisoning herself. She suspected her rival, who loved this man, Poseidon. He was a god, but that didn't matter, it was nothing, compared to the fact that she loved a man. God, no God, it didn't matter, such is the phenomenon of love. She was pregnant and was afraid that poison would harm the child, despite his divine nature. The poisons she could think of, apart from arsenic, were botulinum toxin, also known as botulinum toxin, discovered in 1735 in a spoiled sausage. The bacterium Clostridium botulinum produces the toxin, the most potent known poison. Botulinum poisoning is severe, with 1/4 being severe. Symptoms occur after a dozen or so hours. Double vision, a feeling of dry mouth, paralysis of intestinal peristalsis, speech and swallowing disorders, and paralysis of respiratory muscles, which can lead to death. She did not notice such symptoms in herself. Botulinum toxin, like many poisons, shows symptoms depending on the dose. She did not eat the sausage. The toxin also has medicinal properties. It is used to treat strabismus, excessive sweating, bruxism, and migraines, and in aesthetic medicine to reduce wrinkles. A small dose administered to facial muscles paralyzes them, which causes wrinkles to be reduced, thus enhancing beauty. Sedussa had more expressive features. Maybe it was botulinum toxin? But where did the darker skin color come from? Maybe adrenal insufficiency with reduced cortisol production? Autoimmune? Toxic? Maybe mercury? It is available and highly toxic. Maybe snake venom? Snakes are not well known. It is thought that toxins produced by snakes, for example, phospholipids obtained from the horned viper, Cerastes cerastes, and the snake, Macrovipera lebetina, have anti-cancer properties. Again, this is a coincidence of good and evil. Radioactive polonium is out, it is unavailable, as is Novichok, at the disposal of Russian services, and they are deadly.